Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that today is just about Nintendo because we were talking, of course, obviously, about the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation. Now, before I was saying I was firm on the belief. I was like, it is a presentation, not a direct. I was correcting everybody that called it a direct. And then the title card, it opened up and it was a direct. And I was like, all right, well, like they had the direct footage playing at the start. I was like, fine, it's a direct too. But it's also a presentation, so it is both of those things. We had a direct, a presentation, whatever you want to call it, today. We had the direct last week for Switch 1, and of course the assumption was that most of those games shown were going to be on Switch 2. Some of those have already been confirmed as well. But yes, Switch 2, we finally know more info about Switch 2. Basically all the big stuff, I would assume. I don't think there's anything else they're hiding from us. We know it all. We're here. I'm a know-it-all. I'm here to talk about it. I know this is coming out the day after, but I had school, unfortunately, and then I had stuff after school. This came out while I was at school, and I was like going around not trying to get spoiled about it. I was like, I can't be spoiled on this presentation until I get home and get to watch it myself. And so I have. I've watched it myself. I've talked about it with my dad. I've reflected on it. I've taken notes. I skimmed through it a second time, and here I am ready to talk about the presentation. Of course, I don't know everything when it comes to this stuff. There's a lot I don't know, but I do think I have, for the most part, most of the important stuff here. I'm not going to talk about every single game mentioned. There are a few smaller ones that were in those little reels that weren't very important, but for the most part, I'm going to talk about everything. I guess we can hop into it, right? So they showed off the little Switch 2 stock footage, and the first game. I don't think there's any stock footage or anything. I think they basically just popped right into it. They hopped into Mario Kart World. Of course, we were all calling this Mario Kart 9 until today. Mario Kart World, interesting name for it. Of course, there were the rumors going around for a little while that it was going to be like a Forza Horizon open world with missions and all that stuff. And it looks like that's kind of what this is. There is a direct specifically for Mario Kart World on April 17th. So it's only 15 days until, I guess, 14 when you're saying, yeah, 14 when you're saying this, 2 weeks away. I'm sure I'll talk about that, but I don't imagine I'll like do an extra episode or anything for it. I think I'll probably just wait until the next week to talk about it. I don't think it's important enough for that. But this presentation was important enough for me to delay the episode a day, so that's why I've done that. Mario Kart World, 24 players. They confirmed that. Of course, a lot of us already knew that because somebody went through and like counted up the spaces for racers on the track before, in the little 5 seconds of footage we got. I think it was more than that, but like 10 seconds we got in the Switch 2 reveal. And yeah, sure enough, there's 24 racers, which is pretty cool. I mean, it does make sense that, over time, as things get more powerful, they can add more racers and stuff. I don't know, maybe one day we'll have 50. I don't know. That seems like a little much, but, 24, I don't know, man. 24 seems a little overwhelming, but I'm sure there will be options to lower it to 8 or 12 or 16 or whatever, maybe 20. I don't know. I'm sure there will be different increments. Mario Kart World, there were all the rumors that it was going to be the launch game, and I was not believing it. I was like, 3D Mario is going to be the launch game. Um, I was set on that, and of course, we didn't see a 3D Mario game. And overall, I'm very positive on this presentation. I think this might have been one of the best Nintendo Directs presentations, anything like one of the best showings from Nintendo ever. And I think I'm happier and more excited for Nintendo's future than I possibly ever have been. Now, of course, I'm quite young, but yes, this is amazing. I mean, however, there's one big problem and a couple minor problems, but I have one big problem, and that's the lack of 3D Mario. And I'm a little concerned about a few things. I'm sure I'll touch on this more later. So we'll talk about that. But it's mostly I'm a little worried about the no 3D Mario thing. And yes, Mario Kart World is the launch game. And I've said this a couple times in the podcast. I was like, Mario Kart cannot launch a console. People buy Nintendo consoles and then they buy Mario Kart, but they never buy a console to play Mario Kart. Mario Kart's not selling the console. It's just that when you buy a console, you then have to buy Mario Kart. And so that's what's happening. They're launching the console with Mario Kart, And I'm still not entirely sure that that's the best move. Now, I'm not trying to armchair CEO, even though that's exactly what I'm doing. Um, it just really, I don't, Mario Kart, I think it's too casual a thing to launch a console with. However, this Mario Kart does change things up enough that I think maybe it can work out. I think it'll work out. I don't think this will like completely flop because it has a bad launch. I think the launch will be okay. Um, if it was 3D Mario, I think this launch would be exceptional. If they had 3D Mario and then they had Mario Kart like 3 weeks later or a month later, then this launch would be phenomenal. Um, but with Mario Kart World, I think they can manage. There's definitely some things that lend well to Mario Kart World, like the online stuff that we'll talk about, the voice chat stuff we'll talk about. So I think it's an acceptable launch title, and I could see a world in which, maybe we got, maybe we would have got like Mario Kart as the launch and DK a little bit later, but then 3D Mario would have had to have been the holiday thing. And to not even have heard about it for the holiday thing does not bode well, I don't think. But I still think the console is going to do well, even though I wasn't saying that just a week ago. I'm actually a lot more positive on it now. So yes, Mario Kart World. My dad was actually very excited about Mario Kart World, and a lot of people have been very excited about Mario Kart World. I go online, everybody's talking about Mario Kart World, like it's like the biggest thing from the direct. And I mean, I guess it probably is the biggest thing from the direct because it's the launch title, right? And I'm excited about it, and I'll play it, and it'll probably be great. I'll play the Grand Prix stuff. I might try some online stuff, but I'm not a huge online guy. So maybe here and there I'll try it, but yeah, I'm excited about Mario Kart World. I'm not quite as excited as some other people. I saw some new characters in there. I saw like Pauline and like the Hammer Bro. Obviously, these are from Mario Kart Tour, right? I think everybody kind of expected that they were going to add in characters from Mario Kart Tour, and they had different costumes and stuff. And I'm not entirely sure if it's like you select your costume and then enter a race, or if those costumes can be like found on the track or something. I don't know how this works. So it was interesting to see. Of course, Mario Kart looked phenomenal. When we saw it in the Switch 2 reveal, I wasn't feeling the art style. I was like, I don't know about this. But yeah, no, the art style is great, and I don't know what I was thinking before. It's fantastic. I have no complaints with the art style. Um, I'm sure it'll maybe take some getting used to when I play it and be like, this is nothing like 8 Deluxe, right? It might take some getting used to, but that's with everything, right? Of course, it's going to take some getting used to. I can't expect to just grab a new console and immediately be like, yeah, this is familiar, right? There's going to be some unfamiliarities. Unfamiliarities? I don't know. And I'm sure we'll adjust to them as time goes on. But yes, Mario Kart was, I guess, probably the biggest thing of the Direct, and they opened with it, and a lot of people have been talking about it. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. So Mario Kart World, that of course is coming out on the launch date. Actually, I could talk about the launch date and the price here. They didn't actually announce the price per se, but I think it was in fine print or something. Maybe they put it out on the web. Actually, I think it was because they put it out on the website. But I found it from IGN. Because, like I said, I didn't watch the presentation while I was at school. I waited till I got home. But I did look up the price and the release date while I was at school because I wanted to know those. And it was $450 on June 5th. And the May 15th thing never made sense to me because Nintendo was doing those demonstrations, like you get to play the Switch 2, and those were going until like June 2nd or something. So it never made any sense to me for the May 15th thing. Like, that seems stupid. And it seemed like all the leakers, all the speculators, they were all jumping on this May 15th rumor, and I just wasn't believing it. And then a lot of people were saying early June. I was expecting early July. The early June people were right, as it turns out. I did kind of change here just in the last couple weeks. I was like, well, maybe it'll be end of June. But no, it was actually the beginning of June. That's fine. I think that's a good slot to release in. And of course, I want this thing ASAP, right? I take it tomorrow, right? Let's get it tomorrow. Um, but anyways, I think that's a reasonable time. And 450 is like surprisingly cheap. I actually expected 500. I guess I didn't really expect more than 500, so it's not that cheap. But I was expecting 500, and that was without expecting the all the performance stuff that we got. Like, this thing is way more powerful than I expected, and I'm very excited about that. And we'll touch on that more here soon. Um, but yeah, for $450 for this to be so powerful is insane. And I'm very happy at the price point. I honestly think they could have got away with 500 and made a better margin, and it would have been fine. I wouldn't have complained with 500, but 450 sounds great to me, right? Totally fine with that. So the second thing they really talked about was the C button. Of course, everybody wanted to know, me included, what does the C button do? What's the C button? What's the C button, right? And there was a thing that came out a couple days. I want to say it was a couple days ago, like maybe end of March. There, somebody like listened to the little sound that the C button made when they pressed it in the trailer, not the presentation, and it sounded vaguely similar to the Wii U and 3DS Miiverse sound. And so people were like, "Oh my gosh, they're bringing back Miiverse." And I don't think I was ever really believing that they were bringing back Miiverse per se, but I expected that there could be something similar to Miiverse with some sort of community button. That's what I was expecting, a community button. And in a way, I was close, but it's not community. It's actually a chat button. Which, yeah, I mean that is pretty close. I wouldn't say I was on the money, but I was close enough, right? The C button is a chat button, and it's not like messaging and stuff. It's like voice chat, which is crazy. I saw them showing this off. I was like, oh my gosh, are they in a Discord call? Like, what's going on? And yeah, pretty much, they're in a Discord call, but they're doing it on Nintendo, and I was blown away. I like honestly, my reaction to this was insane. I was like, this is crazy, right? So basically, the way this works is like We Speak. If anybody remembers We Speak for the Wii, right? The little microphone that you put on your TV, and you could, it mostly was for Animal Crossing. You could go visit other people's towns and voice chat and stuff, and it was really bad. Um, because it wasn't good at noise canceling and stuff. This one, I'm sure, probably will be pretty good, but it's a similar kind of idea. You talk into the Switch 2, even from many feet away, apparently, and it's supposed to filter out all background noise and just send your voice, not the game audio or any of that, to everybody else. And so you'll be able to voice chat, you'll be able to screen share, all this stuff. And that sounds pretty cool. Personally, I likely will never use it, or maybe once or twice, but I doubt it'll be a big thing. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun stuff that comes out of that. A lot of fun stuff on YouTube, a lot of people telling cool stories and stuff. I'm sure there'll be fun, cool things. And, it's interesting to see. This is a way in which Nintendo is definitely moving in the modern direction. I'm not saying Nintendo's like in the past, right? Nintendo's usually leading with a lot of the innovation stuff. But as far as online infrastructure, Nintendo is, of course, often behind. And so it is interesting to see them kind of get with the times on some of this stuff. Of course, everybody has been asking, really since the Wii U was coming out, they got to get on the voice chat, they got to get on all this stuff, and they didn't. And finally they're getting on it, and that's pretty cool. Like I said, I might never use the voice chat, but it is pretty neat. And they had the camera too. So there's a camera. I'm assuming that this is not coming with the. I don't know if they actually said if it's coming with the console or not. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's not. I'm saying it's probably gonna be a separate peripheral on day one. And it'll probably cost like, I don't know, $60-$70, something like that. Um, so that's neat. I mean, I'm probably not gonna buy the camera because I would never probably use it. Um, but it is cool that it's there, and it's a neat little option for you if you feel like it, right? And the camera plugs into the top USB port. So that's really they did talk about the USB port on the top. They talked about it for charging and for the camera, and I'm guessing it's probably just going to be for those two things. I don't believe in the DS top screen rumor. There were people that were saying they were going to use the top USB port to attach a second screen, so you could play DS and possibly 3DS Virtual Console games, or not Virtual Console, Nintendo Switch Online. You know what I meant. I don't believe that's going to happen, but there were a lot of things that happened in this presentation that I didn't believe were going to happen, so I'm not going to rule it out completely. And I just actually thought about something. I was talking about the price of the console. Let's talk about the price of the games, because I was very curious to find out about the price of the games. And so I went on the Nintendo website, and sure enough, they were selling pre-orders and stuff for Mario Kart World and for Donkey Kong, which we'll talk about later. And they're $80. Games are $80 on the Switch too. I'm sure most people have heard about this by now. Um, I'm very positive on this presentation overall. I think it was great. I'm really happy for Nintendo. Um, $80 is too much. I mean, it is. It's too much. To put the games from 60 to 80. They didn't even make that. There was no 70, right? I mean, Tears of the Kingdom was 70, but that was it. It's too much too fast is honestly what it is. And I'm sure there's there's reasons and stuff. I mean, obviously the games are more ambitious, and they're really. I don't think they're selling the console for enough. I think if they sold the console for 500, perhaps the games could be 70 or 75. I think even 75 would be better than 80, because we all expected 70. And if the games came out and they were 75, then I'd be like, okay, right, you're stretching it. But 80 is too much. Like, really, 80 is too much. Um, like, we're forking out $80 for Nintendo games. I don't know, man. Like, it feels like, to go from 60 to 80 is a lot. It's a lot more. So, and another thing is the UK. They're getting gypped on everything. If you're British, I'm sorry, man, because goodness gracious, the PS5 Pro was coming out and it was the same price in pounds as it was in dollars. So they were paying like $100 more. And now the games in the UK are £80, so they're like $105 almost. So it's just crazy. Like they're getting gypped over there. But yes, I mean even over here, $80, too much money. They probably should have been 70, maybe 75. That said, I will still buy them. So it's. I mean, I don't know. I like my games. And it's not like 80 is completely unacceptable. I think if it was like 90, maybe I'd be like, oh man, I'm not gonna buy many of those. I think at 80, I still will buy them, but 80 is still too much money, and I'm sure they know they can get away with it, and that's unfortunate. But that's just the reality of the situation, and I'm pretty sure that the PS6 and the Xbox Prime games, I'm calling it Xbox Prime, I think those games are probably also going to be 80. Good chance they're actually 90 even. I wouldn't even be surprised with 90. More and more games are coming out with like ultimate editions or, deluxe editions and stuff at $100 or $90 or something. So it really wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if all games move in that direction here pretty soon. But I am a little upset that Nintendo was leading that price increase. I was just talking last week about Rockstar and how it was unacceptable that GTA 6 could possibly come out at $100. And I was talking about how Nintendo was not the best with their pricing on some of their remakes and stuff. And here we are with Nintendo games now costing $80. And on some level, I don't want to complain too much, because even last week I was like, yeah, and even Nintendo, even Nintendo charges too much. And so I really should come on here and bash Nintendo and be like, this is unacceptable, you can't do this. But I find myself not able to do that. One, because I'm such a big fan, but also because the rest of this presentation was so good, and the console is cheaper than it likely probably should have been. And so I think it's okay. But it's just not a good direction for us to be moving. If the Switch 2 games are $80, everything else is going to be that or more. So I'm really not thrilled about the state of the industry, but I don't think I can necessarily blame it all on Nintendo. And I'm sure that's what a lot of people are going to be quick to do. I think a lot of people are probably already. I don't think we can blame this on Nintendo, but it is a situation in the industry, and it clearly says something about the state we're in. Um, but let's get away from that. I don't want to be too negative about this direct because otherwise this direct was fantastic. Um, I did not find. I can actually look again because I didn't really look when I was on there. I just happened to not see it. I want to see what the game cases look like because that's like something that really interests me because I like to collect physically. I want to see what the game cases look like. They showed us the game cartridges and they're the same size, which I actually find surprising. I thought the cartridges were going to have a little lip on them, like the DS and 3DS ones did, but they have no lip or anything. So that means technically you could put a Switch 2 cartridge in a Switch 1, and I guess it just wouldn't play. But there's nothing stopping you from putting it in there. But the cartridges are the same as the Switch 1 cartridges, except they're red, which is interesting. Of course, they probably wanted to change it up some way, right? So they were more recognizable. But the red cartridges, I think they look nice. We didn't actually get to see like an actual cartridge. We just saw like a model cartridge, right? Like it wasn't a real one. Um, but I think the red cartridges are cool. Of course, they had to do something else, something new, right? Um, Here we go. I'm trying to find Donkey Kong Bonanza. Trying to find either one of them their cases. I don't think they have. I don't think they have the cases on here. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any info on what the Switch 2 game boxes look like. That's unfortunate. I'm sure we'll figure that out here soon, or I guess we'll just have to wait until they're in the store and then we'll know. Um, but it would be nice to know what the cases look like because I tend to care about that kind of stuff. Um, all right, so the next thing that we got to saw or got to see, we saw a few different like things like hardware things. They showed us the screen and how much larger it was. They showed us the resolution and stuff. We got to see all that. They also showed us the kickstand. And of course, the kickstand is all fixed. It is not that terrible kickstand from the base model Switch. Of course, if you had the OLED Switch, you didn't have to deal with a horrible kickstand because that one had a good kickstand. And this one, I don't know if it's as good as the OLED one, but it definitely looks better than the original Switch model kickstand. So I'm happy with that, as long as it's also pretty good and doesn't break off and isn't all flimsy. It looks like it's a lot better. It's adjustable. That's always nice. So I'm much happier with the kickstand. Not that I like ever play the Switch in tabletop mode, but who knows? Maybe I will a little bit more if the kickstand's any good. You know, like I think that was maybe part of the reason why I never did play it in tabletop mode is because the kickstand was so bad. The next thing that we saw, I don't know if these are all perfectly in order, but I just kind of wrote some things down. Another thing we saw was the game share feature. So, of course, in the last direct, we saw those virtual game cards, and I'm still not entirely sure on how those are working. It's a little confusing, if I'm being honest. Um, but the game share was another feature that we saw in this presentation, and it's basically the exact same thing that they had back on DS. So if anybody remembers on DS, if with certain multiplayer games, you could like download them, specifically like Mario Kart DS and stuff. Um, if other people wanted to play online with you, they could download a copy of the online only parts of the game, and then they could play it for free if the other person they were playing with had the game. And so that's exactly what they're doing here. I don't know if you have to download it or if it just streams. I'm not entirely sure how it's working. But if somebody has the game and somebody else wants to play on another system, they can just download or stream or something the game for free and play the online mode, which is really cool. It's not like a huge deal. It's not like this is a make or break or any reason to buy the console, right? But it's a nice little thing that they're doing, and I think it's, definitely some goodwill to the consumers. And, it's also nice because they did that back on DS, and so it's kind of cool to see that again, right? Bring some of that stuff back. It's always fun, right? So the game share feature, again, I may never use it, but it's a cool little thing that they've added in here. The next thing I'm going to talk about is I don't think that I actually talked about it until later, but I wanted to talk about it here before I forget. The Nintendo Switch 2 versions of games. And what I mean by that is actually how they framed it. Switch 1 games coming to Switch 2, being re released on Switch 2, with extra added features. And the one they focused on here was Super Mario Party Jamboree. And so Super Mario Party Jamboree is going to be added. A new version of it is going to be added to the Switch 2, and it's going to have all the same things that the original did, but now it has compatibility with the voice chat and it has compatibility with the camera. Um, and so you're going to be able to see each other's faces and stuff. And they kind of showed it like the faces are overlaid in the game. So you'll see Mario on the board moving, and whoever's playing Mario, their face will be next to Mario, also moving on the screen, which is a pretty cool idea. And I think there's a lot of potential for that, right? If you're playing a game of Splatoon and you have the camera on and you're voice chatting with somebody, maybe your face is next to your Splatoon character, and then it's easier to see when you're playing the game, like who's playing who, really, right? And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And I don't really know what exactly to think of it, but it's an interesting thing, right? And Super Mario Party Jamboree, they showed off some mini games can be now used with the mouse feature. And they showed off the mouse feature. Of course, anything too crazy. They didn't show off anything that was, mind blowing or anything about the mouse feature. They showed off some cool uses and stuff for it. I don't know how many games are going to use that versus just the regular gyro or no motion or anything. I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, when we get it, I'm sure there'll be some things that use it and some things that don't. Some things that you can use it and some things you can't. I'm sure that will all come up, but we'll figure it out as we go. Certainly some of the things that are mouse controlled, I'm kind of thinking maybe they won't work in handheld mode because you can't use the mouse when in handheld mode. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, right? So maybe they will have button-only controls for some of these things. But yes, the Nintendo Switch 2 editions, you can buy the game probably for the full $80 instead of buying it on Switch, and you get those extra features and performance enhancements and visual enhancements and stuff. Or if you already have the Switch 1 version and you move it over, you can just pay to upgrade, just like you can on like PlayStation, to the better version of the game, which is a really cool idea. And I don't know how much it's going to cost. If I had to guess, it's probably the $20 from the $60 to the $80 games. It's probably $20, which is probably too much to be honest with you. If it's $10, I think that's okay. $10 is acceptable, but I'm kind of thinking it's going to be 20, and 20 is probably too much. But we'll see. Maybe they'll do us a favor here, but I'm not going to bet on it to be honest. But yes, the Nintendo Switch 2 editions of games, they showed off a couple more. They showed off Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I think they're coming separately. I don't think this is like a combo pack. But both of those games, they've just added like performance enhancements so they run better and they look better. And I was watching the footage that they were showing, and sure enough, they seem to run significantly better. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both. I was watching this footage, I was like, man, those look so smooth, you know? I don't think they really looked a whole lot better, but they definitely ran better, and I think that's an important thing because Tears of the Kingdom can get a little bit choppy. Breath of the Wild was never choppy per se, but it was always at 30 FPS instead of 60, and I think it's at 60 now. At least it looks like it. So that's pretty cool. Tears of the Kingdom, obviously, at 60 is going to be awesome too. Even if they can get a solid 30, I wasn't really paying attention. I don't know what the frame rate is, but it doesn't matter. Even if it's only 30, that's still, a solid 30 is obviously still better than the juddy 30 to sometimes 20 that we would get in Tears of the Kingdom. Um, so these upgrades, it seems like they might be worth it, depending on the game. There were some other ones too. They had Kirby and the Forgotten Land, where they're adding a whole another side mode to it, or like a whole another mini campaign. And I want to say there were a couple more, but I can't actually recall. I don't know. It wasn't anything too important. But yeah, mainly they were talking about Super Mario Party Jamboree. And I think the reason they did that is because Jamboree was probably originally supposed to be a Switch 2 game with all those mouse controlled mini games and stuff, but probably either the Switch 2 got delayed or Jamboree got delayed or something happened where they had to move it, and so now they just took all that development time and put it into the Switch 2 version, which is, definitely a cool thing, and I think it's totally acceptable for them to release this a second time. I don't think it's a huge deal. So I'm happy with the Switch 2 editions. I probably won't upgrade Jamboree, or I don't know. I don't have Kirby in the Forgotten Land, so maybe I'll just buy it on Switch 2 instead of on Switch 1. We'll see. As far as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, maybe I'll upgrade Tears of the Kingdom because I still have to beat that game, so maybe I'll go back to it and upgrade it. We'll see. Again, if it's $10, I might. If it's 20, I probably won't. Just because I'm not somebody who's generally too concerned about frame rates, and I mean, I guess I do like frame rates. I do like it being smoother. I don't care too much about visual fidelity. I can deal with some low resolution stuff. The smoothness I do like, but I can deal with 30 frames. 30 frames isn't too bad. Speaking of frame rates, they did talk about frame rates, and it was really weird seeing Nintendo talk about frame rates because they don't tend to, but they did in this presentation. They talked quite a bit about the frame rates and stuff, and the resolution, and they showed off that they were going to have up to 120 frames per second at 1080p on handheld mode. And when they say up to 120 frames per second, I'm not actually expecting to play Mario Kart World at 120 frames. I'm imagining that for the most part, they just mean stuff above 60, right? So you'll have 60 frames always. You'll always have 60 frames, and you might have more than 60 frames, I think is what they're saying. And maybe like certain aspects will run at more than 60 frames, but then some things are locked to 60 frames. I could see that being a thing as well. But for me, this just means 60 frames or better at 1080p, which is all we need. On Switch, we get the 720p, sometimes 1080p, and then we get it at like 30 frames sometimes, right? So not always do we have like the smoothness we want on Switch 1. So to have 120 frames at 1080p or even 60 frames at 1080p is going to feel quite good. It's going to feel very stable, these frame rates. It's not like they're trying to get, 1,000 frames, right? Obviously, that doesn't work, right? So, this is going to be definitely a big and helpful thing. And here's the thing, too. They can get 4K on the docked mode. Um, so it looks like the dock does indeed have extra technology in there. I'm assuming that the dock is like the AI upscaling, is my guess. Um, I don't know that for sure, but that's my assumption. And they did also show off, specifically for Metroid Prime 4, but I'm assuming it's probably for some other things as well, that certain games are going to have the ability to pick a performance and or quality mode. And this is something that you can do on PS5 and Xbox Series X, just depending on the game. Most games have it, though. I remember like Spider-Man, right? And you could pick the performance or the quality. And so for Spider-Man, like the quality, you'd have like 4K with ray tracing and all this stuff, or you could pick 1080p, or maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was 1440 at 60 frames. And I would always pick the smoother option rather than the better looking option, because personally, the smoothness is more important to me than the graphics. But it was at least nice that that option was there, and I'm actually kind of, in a way, I'm happy that that's coming to Switch as well. But at the same time, the Switch is always, like, not the Switch, but Nintendo, they've always kind of picked the settings for you in a way. They're like, we're going to optimize this experience how we want it. And so to give you that extra freedom is pretty cool, but also a little strange. Like, it seems a little like you wouldn't expect it, right? But I'll take it. I'll probably put all my games in performance mode instead of quality mode because that's how I tend to be. But I'm sure there will be people out there who want to crank up those graphics and see the extra pixels and stuff. And if that's you, that's fine, but that's just not my style. They also unveiled that it was 256 gigabytes, which they pointed out was 8 times that of the Switch 1. I think they said more than 8 times, which isn't correct, but I don't know. Maybe it's like technically a little more than 256. I don't know. But anyways, 8 times that of the original Switch, which is pretty awesome. I'm obviously, the Switch 1 doesn't have nearly enough storage. The Wii U didn't have enough storage, and the Switch has the same amount of storage as the Wii U. So obviously, this was a problem somewhere along the line, and it got really bad with Switch. And so for them to have kind of fixed that is pretty awesome. I don't think anybody expected more than 256, but I know some people were still expecting 128. Thankfully, we did not get 128. We got 256. Personally, I don't buy games digitally, so it's not the end of the world if we were to get a low storage amount. But of course, I don't want people to be upset about storage, so I would want it to be as high as possible. So I'm happy with 256. 512 would be better, right? Of course, half a terabyte would be nice, but I don't think you necessarily need half a terabyte. Nintendo games tend to be smaller in file size, so I don't really see any reason why we would need the full terabyte. But if they put it in here and didn't charge us anymore, I guess it'd be okay. But I'm happy with 256. I think it's an acceptable amount. Works for me, right? Then they showed off this little like game. Like, I don't even know if you can call it a game. It was a little demo, not even a demo really, called Welcome Tour, a Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, where you control this little guy and you walk around on a Switch 2. And it actually reminded me a lot of Astrobot, where with Astrobot you kind of go around and see the different parts of the PS5. Or I guess Astro's Playroom was where they were showing that off, really. But it showed off a little bit in Astro's Bot as well. But Astro's Playroom was like the little free demo you got on PS5 that also happens to be one of the best games ever. Um, where you collect little pieces of the PS5 and you get to see some of the cool features and stuff. And the Welcome Tour thing on Switch 2 seems to be a similar thing, except it's not a game at all. It's just reading, and it's also not free, which is stupid. I went online and everybody was complaining about this because why the heck is this little Welcome Tour thing not free? It's not even a real game. It's just like a showing off their features. And, if they're going to show off their features, then show them off for free. There's no reason I should have to pay for you to show off your features to me. That's kind of crazy. Now, I say that, and yet I might still buy it, but it's pretty stupid, if we're being honest. Like, there's no reason we should have to pay for this. It's digital only, which I guess makes sense. I hope it's not more than like $10, like $5, honestly. $5 is already too much, but I'll pay $5. I think I'd even pay 10, but I wouldn't pay more than 10 for this. If it comes out at 20, I'm not buying it because that's stupid. For a little showing off of the features. It's pretty stupid. Then they showed off the new Pro Controller. Of course, the Pro Controller on Switch 1, I think most people are pretty happy with this Pro Controller on Switch 1. I don't actually have one. I used to have a Power A one that was pretty similar from what I had heard. But the Switch 1 Pro Controller, there were two big problems with it, depending on who you were. You might have had two problems with it. For one, some people were complaining about the lack of a headphone jack, and that's been solved. The Switch 2 Pro controller does have a headphone jack, so that's nice. And then some people were complaining about the D-pad. And I know the D-pad on my Power A controller was garbage as well. And also, I mean, if we want to talk about it real quick, the Switch 2 still doesn't have a D-pad. It has those four buttons. Honestly, I'm not expecting Nintendo to ever have a D-pad again. They might not ever. And I guess I'm just going to have to live with it. Not the end of the world, honestly. It kind of sucks, but it is what it is, right? But their Pro controller does have a D-pad, and it looks to me like it's better. Like I see the Pro controller, and I'm like, okay, the D-pad looks better than the original Switch Pro controller, but I'm not entirely sure. I would have to like hold them both in my hands to really know. So I'll probably pick up a Pro controller at some point for it, and then I'll be able to know. They also talked about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which all the speculators and leakers said they weren't going to mention. But to be honest, they didn't really say much. They mostly were just there to mention that it was coming to both Switch 1 and Switch 2. But I think they showed even less footage than they did back in March. Because they showed a little bit of footage in March. It wasn't like anything crazy. But, you know, they showed a little bit. We got enough. And we just got that it was coming out sometime in 2025, and that's the same thing we got this time. It's not a launch game. I'm guessing it's going to be a holiday thing, probably that October slot if I had to guess, because there's nothing else there, Nintendo-wise, so if I had to guess, it's going to be in that slot. In Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, they showed it off. It was on Switch. It's on Switch 2. The Switch 2 version, I'm assuming the only upgrade for Switch 2 is just the performance and quality, which is definitely enough. I don't think they need to add anything else for a new game. Um, Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends ZA, they were both coming to Switch 1 as well. And of course, we knew that. Like, we knew that they were confirmed for Switch, and we assumed that they were also for Switch 2. And that was, in fact, true. Metroid Prime 4, I am excited about, just like most other people. However, I don't think I'm going to pick it up until I've played Metroid Prime 2 and 3. So if Nintendo wants to give me a way to play Metroid Prime 2 and 3, that's great. Otherwise, I guess I won't play it until I can. Otherwise, I guess I'll have to buy it on GameCube and Wii if it doesn't come out. Or if I'll have to buy 2 on GameCube, 3 on Wii if they don't come out on Switch 2 in some way. Of course, I'll just say it right now, the GameCube Virtual Console came out, right? We'll talk about that more later. But maybe there's a chance we'll get Metroid Prime 2 on there, and then I can play it on there. But I really wish they would just put out Metroid Prime 2 and 3 as a remaster on both of them together, or even separately, I'd take it. Because I'm working on Metroid Prime 1, and I don't have a way to play 2 and 3 on a modern console, so it kind of sucks, to be honest, and I want to play 4, but I don't want to play 4 until I've played the other 3. And then as far as Pokemon Legends ZA, I don't plan on playing it until I've played Pokemon Legends Arceus, but I don't know. I mean, you probably don't have to play Arceus. You could probably just hop in with ZA, so I might. We'll see. I'll do a little bit more research, you know, see if it seems like something that I can just hop into, and maybe I'll hop into it, or maybe I'll just wait. Maybe I'll play another Pokemon game or something. I don't know. So Pokemon Legends VA looked fun, you know, looked nice. The next thing they showed off was another game, but it wasn't it wasn't an existing IP. It was a brand new IP, which it wasn't much of an IP, but it is an IP, right? And that is DXD, or Drag Times Drive. And Drag Times Drive, I'm going to say Drag and Drive, because that sounds better. Drag and Drive is a wheelchair basketball game. I don't know, it's like the Paralympics version of basketball, where these guys are wheeling around and playing basketball. And it kind of is like, almost like Rocket League, but with basketball instead of soccer, right? Where you can, like, climb up on the walls and stuff, and you can dunk and stuff. It actually looks very fun. It's a Nintendo-developed game. It's not like some third-party thing. It's a Nintendo-developed game that is controlled entirely with the mouse function on the two Joy-Cons. And they showed off a lot of cool stuff. Like, you actually use the Joy-Cons in the same movements to, you know, throw the ball around, pass the ball, dunk the ball, shoot the ball, all this stuff. And you can even like wave to your teammates to tell them you're open, and you can clap your teammates, like you can, do a high five and stuff. Like it's actually really cool. The stuff they showed off. I don't know. I'm assuming this is going to be physical, but it might just be a digital game. I don't know. I intend to maybe check this one out. We'll see. I don't know though. If it's physical and it's a full $80, I might not worry about it because that's a lot for a little online thing. But if it's a cheaper thing, then maybe I'll try it out because it seems like an interesting thing. I can't imagine it's going to be super cheap though. I do wish though, because this is another new Nintendo IP, kind of like ARMS was back on the Switch, right, where they had a little online thing to boost Switch Online memberships, and I think that's exactly what they're doing here. But they're also doing it to show off the mouse function. And I guess if there's one complaint that I had with Dragon Drive, it's that they didn't use like characters, right? And I'm not saying they have to have pre-existing characters, but make new characters like they did in ARMS, you know? And maybe they could actually have a story where they explain the characters and so you actually care about them. But like I definitely care about the characters more in ARMS than these random guys in helmets. I mean, like not that I cared much about characters in ARMS, but I definitely care more there than I do up here because there is no such thing as a character here. So I don't know. I guess there's a possibility that they give you some like customization options for your character. But I think it'd be nice if they had characters in the game. Not a huge thing though. Really, it's about the gameplay. Then, of course, the next thing was a pretty big one. It was one that all the leakers and all the speculators had right. They all were expecting this, and for those reasons, I was as well. And that, of course, is Elden Ring on Switch 2. When Switch 1 was coming out, Bethesda's support with Skyrim was really a big thing for third parties, and it really told everybody that third parties were going to be there on Switch. And they were. Third parties came out strong on Switch, and then they kind of went away in the second half of the generation. And so this time, I think they're trying to emulate that with the same thing with Bethesda. Instead of having Skyrim come to Switch 2, now it's Elden Ring, right? Which is even bigger a deal. Um, so they definitely had a lot of third party support in this direct, and we're going to talk about that all in a row here and over the next few minutes. But yes, Elden Ring on Switch 2. I tried Elden Ring on PS5. I hate Elden Ring, honestly. I know that's probably just going to lose me people. Everyone's going to run away. I really don't like Elden Ring. I guess if anybody wants me to talk about Elden Ring, email the show at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. Email me any questions, but you can also email me about Elden Ring if you wanted me to elaborate more on my distaste of Elden Ring. I'm sure I'll bring it up at some point, but I'll probably be talking about Switch 2 from now until it comes out, until actually probably well after it comes out. But yes, Elden Ring on Switch 2. If I'm being honest, Elden Ring looked phenomenal on Switch 2. It looked amazing. I was like, man, all of the games they showed looked amazing on Switch 2. And they were boasting this 4K, they were boasting this 1080p on the handheld, and the 60 frames or 120 frames. I was like, oh my gosh, these are literally PS5 and Xbox Series X specs. Like they've literally got a PS5 crammed in this Switch 2. I'm not even kidding. Like this thing is not much less powerful. They're not sacrificing much to put these games on Switch 2, which is amazing. I mean, we're paying less money for a handheld that is much smaller and it has the same power as a PS5, not quite, but close enough, right? I was like, "Oh my gosh, what are they, wizards over at Nintendo?" I mean, it's crazy. I don't know how they do it, right? Um, and it makes me really think with all the third-party support that we got that the Switch 2 is really going to be the place to play third-party games over the next, 6 years. 7 years, 8 years, whatever, however long it lasts. Probably not eight. They probably won't do another 8 year generation. It'll probably be like seven, maybe 6.5, depending on how well it does. But anyways, Elden Ring on Switch 2. I don't have a whole lot to say about Elden Ring because I haven't played much of it and I really didn't like it. But of course, I am happy to see Elden Ring on Switch 2 because I do want the Switch 2 to flourish, right? And of course, a lot of people are going to be really happy to see Elden Ring out. A lot of people are huge fans of Elden Ring, and I'm sure Elden Ring being on Switch 2 is going to do a lot of good things for it because it's a huge game, right? It's a hugely popular game. A lot of people love it. So that's the big thing. It's kind of like a Skyrim coming to Switch moment. It's a big indicator of third-party support on the Switch 2, which is definitely something we need. The next thing was Hades 2, another indicator of third-party support. Of course, this is by Supergiant Games. I haven't played Hades 1, but a lot of people did. And Hades 2, I don't know if that's coming out this year or next year or when exactly it's coming out, but I'm not surprised to hear that it's on Switch 2. But it is nice to know for sure that it is. I don't know, maybe I'll end up playing this one. Who knows? But yes, Hades 2, another indie. Well, I don't know. Indie, does it count as an indie? I don't know. I guess it's an indie, right? But Supergiant is a bigger studio as far as indies go, right? Then there was a Street Fighter 6. There was why did I say it like that? A Street Fighter 6. Capcom, guy from Capcom came out, talked about Street Fighter 6. Apparently, Street Fighter 6 is coming out on launch. I don't know exactly when Street Fighter 6 originally came out. Okay, 2023. So it's like a couple of years old, and Street Fighter 6 is coming out now on Switch 2 as well. So that's pretty cool. You know, of course, I want all the stuff that's on these other platforms to come over, right? And you know, I'm not like a huge fighting game fan. I don't imagine I'll play this, but it's cool to see Street Fighter over here. Maybe we can get Mortal Kombat over here as well. You know, get them all over here. Um, I don't have much to say about Street Fighter, but it's pretty cool. Then we had Damon X Machina. I did not actually recognize what this was until they said the name, and then I was like, "Oh, actually, that makes a lot of sense, right?" But I saw all the trailer and stuff. I was like, "What is this weird mech game?" You know? But it was Damon X Machina, and honestly, it looked really good. I mean, again, graphically, the Switch 2, everything they showed off looked amazing. It was insane, honestly. Then they had Joseph Anderson out to talk about Split Fiction. This is also coming out at launch. Um, I probably won't play Split Fiction because I don't really play co-op games. I don't have people to play with. But you know, it's a 3D platformer. Apparently, it's pretty good. Besides the story, um, and you know, I've never played a Joseph Anderson game. I guess I did play the first 5 minutes of Brothers, and then I stopped. Not because I wasn't liking it. I just was like, okay. I got Game Pass, and that was one of the things I downloaded, and I was like, well, I'm gonna come back to this. I want to play something else right now, and I never did. Then they had EA come out. Of course, you know, EA was like, all right, we're going to come out with a game. It's going to be, you know, a dollar for every minute you play it, right? No, I'm kidding. But anyways, EA, they came out to talk about, well, I don't want to even say they came out. They just had a little voiceover. They didn't actually have a guy there to talk about EA Sports, FC 24 or 25 or whatever they're on, and then Madden NFL. I don't know. They're putting Madden. They're putting FC. It's not FIFA anymore. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. They're putting soccer. They're putting football out on Switch too. I mean, am I surprised? No. My God. I mean, I guess it's cool that they're there, and I'm sure that they actually will probably look nice now. And I mean, that's cool. I mean, I don't really care, to be honest. I don't play any of those sports games. They had Hogwarts Legacy was shown off by Avalanche. I think they're the people behind that. And Hogwarts Legacy is on Switch, but it was like night and day. That version of Hogwarts Legacy versus this one. I mean, goodness gracious, that one looks terrible. It didn't, you know, things didn't load the same. I mean, it was a pretty bad port, to be honest. But this one seems to be a much better port, so that's nice to see. Again, I might not play this. You know, I don't think I'll play a lot of this third party stuff, but I might play some of it. Um, but you know, Hogwarts Legacy did look good, to be honest. It looks like a good game. We had Tony Hawk 3 and 4. I am not a Tony Hawk guy. Tony Hawk. Why am I saying it like that? Hawk. I had a Tony Hawk 3 and 4. I think those are like old games. I don't know when they came out, to be honest. I'm sure there's people that are watching this that could tell me exactly when Tony Hawk 3 and 4 came out. I think the only thing noteworthy for me about the Tony Hawk 3 and 4 trailer was when they did, like, you know, a few minutes later it was like the SpongeBob meme, and then it came up with Bikini Bottom, and Tony Hawk was skateboarding through Bikini Bottom, and I was a little confused. But I guess they had some license, and I was like, all right, that's funny. So that kind of got me chuckling midway through the Switch 2 presentation, just the random Bikini Bottom with Tony Hawk skateboarding through. They showed off Hitman: World of Assassination. I don't know if that's a game that's already out or if it's been out. I don't really know hardly anything about Hitman, to be honest with you. I've heard about it, but it's not really something I've followed at all. It did look good, though, to be honest. Like, visually and also just in design, it looks like it would be a good game. James Bond 007. This that was kind of shocking. Who is this? What studio? I can't remember the name of the studio. IO, that's what it is. IO Interactive. Okay, IO Interactive. They announced a James Bond 007 game. We don't know exactly what it is. We don't know if it's like a GoldenEye remake or if it's just another new game similar to that. We have no idea. We don't we don't know nothing about it. But it was cool to see them say that. Maybe they're making a new GoldenEye type game. I don't know. I guess that's interesting, right? Then the next thing was a Bravely Default remake, the one on 3DS. Bravely Default originally came out on 3DS. And then there was Bravely Default the second, which was also on 3DS. And then there was Bravely Default 2, which was on Switch, even though they had the second and then they had. Or, sorry, not Bravely Default the second. It was Bravely Second, and then Bravely Default 2. It's kind of weird that they had two sequels, but whatever. And then this remake is on Switch 2, obviously from 3DS. And if I'm being honest, not to be down on this, because I am a fan of Square Enix RPGs, but this remake did not look that good. Like, visually, it looked really bad. Like, it really looked like it wasn't much better looking than the 3DS version. Like, the models on the faces looked terrible, to be honest. I don't know. It's not really a huge deal. They had Yakuza 0, the director's cut, which I was actually very excited about because I don't know if Yakuza comes over to Switch 2, if the whole series does, then I'll be very happy because I have started playing Yakuza. I started Yakuza 0 on PS4 or on PS5, but it's the PS4 version that I'm playing. And it's pretty good. I mean, it's a fun series. I don't know. I'm actually considering like just because I'm only like an hour in, I could just stop and get it on Switch 2 instead. I don't know. I might not do that. We'll see. But it's something I've considered. But yeah, so we have Yakuza 0 coming over. As far as I know, that's the only Yakuza that's coming over. But it wouldn't surprise me if, in a couple of years' time we hear about the Yakuza Kiwami, like probably 1 and 2 both in a collection. And then maybe we'll hear about the Yakuza collection, which is like 4, 5, and 6. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if some of these Yakuza games start coming over. Maybe we get Pirate Yakuza, the newest one, or we just have to wait till the next one. The next one was kind of a Nintendo game. It was made in collaboration with the Nintendo, and it was kind of a bigger deal of a game. They had Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment. Imprisonment, yes. That was coming out in winter. I have Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity on Switch, and I actually also have Hyrule Warriors, the original one, on Wii U. I haven't played the original at all. I don't have the definitive edition on Switch either. Um, I have played some Age of Calamity. Age of Calamity I found to be fun, but for some reason I was doing every quest, and I kind of got burnt out because I was doing too much. And I probably shouldn't have bothered, but it just felt like something that on the map I should try to complete, and then I got burnt out on it. So I stopped playing it. This was like sometime last year I was playing it. But Hyrule Warriors is definitely Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I should say. It's definitely a good game, and it definitely makes me want to pick up Age of Imprisonment, because I'm sure it'll probably be good as well. Of course, this one's going to be interesting because it doesn't have a Link in it, as far as I know, at least. Because Link wasn't around at that time, so it's gonna be kind of weird. I'm not gonna like talk about the story or any of that stuff. I mean, it's like related to Tears of the Kingdom. A lot of people haven't finished that game. I also haven't finished that game, so I can't really talk about that. But yes, Hyrule Warriors, another Hyrule Warriors game. I guess I'm not surprised to see another Hyrule Warriors game. Um, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't have minded if there wasn't such thing as another Hyrule Warriors game, but whatever. I saw Koei Tecmo, and originally I was kind of thinking Fire Emblem, because obviously Fire Emblem is an intelligent systems game, but honestly, at this point, Fire Emblem is like more Koei Tecmo than it is intelligent systems. Like it's made in collaboration with the two, but like there's definitely a lot more people from Koei Tecmo that work on Fire Emblem than there are intelligent systems, because Koei Tecmo is just so much larger a studio. And then, of course, the next reveal was a huge one. I think one of the biggest things they showed off in the entire direct. And that, of course, was the GameCube Switch Online. Honestly, I did not expect to actually see the GameCube Switch Online. I know people have talked about it for a long time. I was not expecting that we were actually going to get it. But we did. We are here with GameCube Switch Online. And yeah, wow. I mean, it's all carrying over from Switch 1. I know they basically confirmed that before, but I'm happy to see that it is, in fact, all carrying over from Switch 1. And here we are. We have GameCube Switch Online coming at launch as well. This isn't even like later. This is like on launch day. On June 5th, we'll have Mario Kart World, and we'll have all these GameCube games, and probably some other stuff that I'm forgetting about. I mean, there's like some uh, third-party stuff. There's like Deltarune. There's what else was there? Cyberpunk. Probably some other stuff I'm forgetting about. But anyways, the GameCube Switch Online lineup is as follows. The first, these are in order of when they showed them as well. The Wind Waker, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. I was both happy and also a little bit upset when I saw this in the presentation because, firstly, I really want to play Wind Waker, so I'm happy that it's there. Right, I want it. I want to play it, so I'm glad that there's going to be a way for me to do that. However, the caveat is that I would have rathered had Wind Waker, the Wii U remake of it, ported over, right? Of course, that's what a lot of people were saying was going to happen. I was really hoping for that Wind Waker remake, and it did not come. So instead, we got the GameCube version, and the GameCube version, I'm sure it's fine. It looks fine. I'm sure it probably plays fine as well, and I'll play it, and I'll probably like it. But if I'm being honest, I probably would have preferred if that remake would have came over because now, because it's on GameCube Switch Online, I'm kind of assuming that it's not going to come out with the remake, and I think I'm probably right on that. Of course, we didn't get Twilight Princess as a reveal for the GameCube Switch Online, so I guess it doesn't rule out the ability of like a Twilight Princess remake, but I think this is basically ruled out the Wind Waker remake. And now I'm kind of thinking like, do I have to go buy the Wii U version because I don't know, it's prettier and stuff. I don't know. I'm thinking I'm probably just gonna play the GameCube version on Switch Online and it'll be fine. So yes, we have the Wind Waker on Switch Online. Of course, I've always wanted to play the Wind Waker. I'm very excited about that. I have to like finish Ocarina of Time and some other Zelda games and stuff first though. But I will be playing the Wind Waker and I'll probably love it. There was Soul Calibur 2. I'll probably try Soul Calibur 2 just so I can play as Link in it. F-Zero GX. I don't know if I'll play F-Zero GX, but I don't know. I might try it out. I think maybe those were all that were coming at launch. But later on, there was going to be Super Mario Sunshine, which of course, I mean, that's a given, right? You have to have Super Mario Sunshine. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. That's awesome because Path of Radiance is like $100. So now you don't have to spend all that money. Pokemon XD, which I think is like some fighting game or something. I don't know. It's some Pokemon spin-off. Super Mario Strikers, which I'm excited to try out. Chibi Robo. Of course, I'm excited to try that as well. And Chibi Robo is another one that is very expensive. Luigi's Mansion, which I'm definitely going to play through, maybe even on launch day. And then Pokemon Coliseum, which is also an interesting one to see. So that was all of the GameCube games that were either coming out on launch day or were coming later on. I guess I can't play Luigi's Mansion 2 on launch day because it won't be out yet, but I'll play it as soon as it launches. So that's going to be exciting. I think, yeah, on launch day for Switch 2, they're going to have the Wind Waker, Soul Calibur, and F-Zero, I believe, were the three that they were going to have. Which, honestly, I guess it's not really the best launch lineup. I mean, Wind Waker is good, right? It'll be nice to have Wind Waker on there, but I don't think Soul Calibur and F-Zero GX are the best other two to have on there. I don't know. I mean, I like Double Dash, but like they already are gonna have a Mario Kart, so it's not a huge deal. And I guess Melee would be nice, but I don't think they're ever gonna put out the Smash Brothers games on Switch Online. They might eventually, I guess. Maybe as some like anniversary thing. I guess what the 30th anniversary of Smash Brothers is in like 3 years, so maybe they'll do it then. We'll see. The next thing was definitely like they framed it as if it was going to be some like earth-shattering news. I don't think it was anything too crazy, but they do have Deltarune, chapters 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. I think those are brand new. I don't think anybody's had Deltarune chapters 3 and 4, and I guess those are coming out on launch, which is pretty cool. I do now own Undertale, but I still haven't played it. I want to play Earthbound and stuff before I play Undertale. So at some point I'm gonna play Earthbound, and then at some point after that I'll play Undertale as well. We had Borderlands 4 getting announced for it. I probably won't play that, but it is another cool thing to have with the third-party support. And all these first-person shooters with the mouse compatibility, I think it's going to be really nice for the people that like their first-person shooters to be able to play them with a mouse if they want, on Switch 2. And I think there's a good chance here that these first-person shooters, like the definitive way to play them, could be on Switch 2 just because of the mouse functionality. Same goes for Sid Meier's Civilization 7. I'm very excited about this. I know my dad also, he's a big Civilization fan and a big Nintendo fan, so he was very excited to see Civilization on a Nintendo console, but also with the mouse support. Like it was like a huge thing, you know. And I think this is a huge thing just in general. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy to see, you know, real-time strategy PC games on Switch 2 with mouse support. Like I really do think Switch 2, with the power it's got and with the mouse and stuff it's got, I think Switch 2 could be the definitive place for a lot of games, Civilization 7 included. So that's pretty cool. WWE 2K was announced. NBA 2K was announced. Those are just coming over from 2K games. That's pretty cool. I did write down Survival Kids. Survival Kids had a weird art style, and it looked like it was very much for kids. It was like a little like I don't know, like Escape from the Island. I don't know. It looks like it could be fun, but probably not anything too crazy. They had Enter the Gungeon 2. Enter the Gungeon was a roguelike from I don't know several years ago that apparently was really good. I haven't played hardly any roguelikes. They had Star Seeker. I don't really know what was going on with Star Seeker. It looked like another possibly kiddie-ish game, but it was like, you know, people with astronaut suits and stuff on. They had that was confirmed for 2026, not 2025. I think that was one of the only things in this presentation that was coming out in 2026. They had Cyberpunk 2027 or 2027, 2077, which of course that name's not going to age very well. Like what happens when we get to 2020 or 2077 and Cyberpunk it's still called Cyberpunk 2077? I don't know. It's going to be kind of weird, isn't it? But there's a long time until 2077, so it's not a big deal. But Cyberpunk 2077 is launching with the Switch 2. Or this, I should say rather, the Switch 2 is launching and Cyberpunk is there. Cyberpunk's been out, you know. But it is, you know, the Switch 2 is coming out and Cyberpunk is going to be there day one. That's another big third party thing. And I think, you know, for it to be there on day one is going to be kind of a big help. You know, there's all the Nintendo stuff. I say all the Nintendo stuff. It's really just Mario Kart and GameCube games. But you know, Cyberpunk 2077 might be a big help for the launch of it as well. They had on here Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was obviously very happy to see that because, of course, the assumption is that after this, we'll also get Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I'm definitely going to pick this up for Switch 2. I want to play the original version of Final Fantasy VII first, and I would like to play the Switch 1 um, port of it. There was a collection with Switch 1 and Switch 2, and I'd like to play that before I play Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I don't know if I will or not. We'll see. But Final Fantasy VII Remake looks like this is going to be a fine version of it. Obviously, you know, it's on PS5, right? But the Switch 2 looks like it can be just as powerful depending on the circumstance. There was Kumitsu Gami. This was another Capcom game. It looked like I don't know, like it was like it looked like a little action game, kind of like Black Myth Wukong or something like that. It looked pretty good. And then, of course, maybe one of the biggest reveals of the direct, shown off in the little reel towards the end of the presentation, just kind of randomly thrown in there. Hollow Knight Silksong. I'm surprised I haven't really heard more about this on the internet. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people freaking out about it. But yeah, they just kind of casually threw in Hollow Knight Silksong as if we haven't been waiting for that game to come out for 100 years. And I say we. Personally, I don't care too much about Silksong, but I really want it to come out for the people that want it to come out. The good news is with Silksong, at least they gave us that it was going to come out in 2025. I don't know if that's actually true, but you know, it could be, right? I mean, who knows? But yes, Hollow Knight Silksong. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will talk a lot more about that than I will. But just know that that's pretty cool, right? I mean, we've been waiting for Silksong for what, 6 years or something, 6, 7 years. So, I mean, I guess you know, Hollow Knight came out in 2016, so you could say 9 years, but most people didn't play it till 20, or maybe it was 2017 it came out, and most people played it in 18, maybe, as that's right. But anyway, it's been like 6 years or something since they announced it, and I guess it's been like 8 years since the last Hollow Knight came out. Almost 7 years, I guess. They showed off Wild Hearts, which is another action, almost like Monster Hunter looking game. At least is how I took it. I haven't played Monster Hunter, so maybe I'm not the best authority on that, but it kind of looked similar to me. This one's by Koei Tecmo. But it's just another. I don't know if this has been revealed or anything. I hadn't heard of it, but it may have been. I don't know. There's also Witchbrook. Witchbrook is a Chucklefish indie game that was shown off in the Direct last week for Switch One. And I mean, I don't think I'm gonna play it, but I've got to admit, Witchbrook has an appealing art style, and it's a little RPG thing, so it does look interesting. There was Marvel Cosmic Invasion, which is a beat 'em up, like a classic, like Turtles style beat 'em up, with Marvel characters and stuff. I think I talked about that last week. It was in the presentation last week as well, where the whole idea is you can like match up two different Marvel characters and they have like a special ability. Also, just randomly shoved in the highlight reel for some reason, Star Wars Outlaws. I guess because the game is supposed to be not good. But for it to come to Switch 2, that's pretty cool as well. I'm sure that'll be a big thing for some people. Um, let's see, we've got Fast Fusion, which is definitely F-Zero, just not official. There was that game on Wii U, Fast Racing Neo was what it was called, and it was a lot like F-Zero, but it was on the Wii U, and it wasn't Nintendo. And now we have Fast Fusion, which is a similar thing. It looks like another F-Zero like F-Zero clone, you could say. This time on Switch 2, which is cool. If Nintendo won't make the game themselves, then I guess take it upon the F-Zero fans to make their own. But I don't know if it'll be as good. I mean, I guess it probably won't be as good, right? It's not a Nintendo game, but it might be good still. There was Shadow Labyrinth. Of course, we've been hearing a lot about Shadow Labyrinth. Shadow Labyrinth was first announced at the Game Awards last year, and that's the Pac-Man horror Metroidvania, where you like play as this girl who like teams up with Pac-Man, and like I don't know all the details. That comes out on like July 18th or something. 18th? That seems weird, doesn't it? Because I thought Donkey Kong was the 17th. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's not the 18th, but it's sometime in there. It's in July. I am actually kind of thinking about picking that one up. I don't know. It seems interesting. We'll see. But of course, it's one of those like really weird things. It's a little, you know, Pac-Man horror Metroidvania. Who would have thought? They showed off Puyo Puyo Tetris 2025. What else was big? Let's see. Oh, there was that Raidu remastered from last week. Oh, Reanimal was one. Reanimal is like this side-scrolling. It looks like a puzzle platformer. It's from THQ Nordic, and it actually looked to me, and I could be totally getting this wrong, but it looks like it's 3D and 2D. It kind of looked to me almost like a Cocoon or a Limbo or Inside kind of game. And I really loved Limbo and Inside. I tried a little bit of Cocoon, I wasn't quite feeling it, but I want to try it again at some point. But yeah, Limbo and Inside, I loved those two games, and it kind of looked vaguely similar to one of those. So I don't know. I could be maybe it's not that. But it looked like it could be something to that effect. There was also the Ridge Racer, Arcade Archives 2 Ridge Racer. I guess it's neat. It's the classic Ridge Racer being, um, I was gonna say remade. It's not really remade. Just kind of ported over, right? That's coming on launch. Of course, they just had to show off that Fortnite was gonna come out. Wow, big 30 party game there, right? Fortnite. I mean, it is, right? But it's just like, who's surprised that Fortnite's coming to Switch 2? Like, they did not have to say that. I actually started laughing when they announced Fortnite for Switch 2. I was like, well, obviously that's coming to Switch 2. It goes everywhere, right? Um, they also had Professor Layton and the New World of Steam. I've never played a Professor Layton, but I've kind of been thinking about getting into it. I'm assuming this probably isn't the best place to start. I'm probably the DS games are the best place to start, but maybe I'll get to it at some point. So I was definitely happy to see a new Layton game. I think it's a new Layton game, right? This isn't a remake or anything. I don't think so. Then of course we had one of the biggest things of the entire direct, the Dust Bloods. So this was a very short, pretty much meaningless trailer. They just had to have some sort of trailer, I guess, but it really didn't tell you anything. It was a little trailer for a new Souls-like from Software, and it even said that it's from Software, and then it announced, Dust Bloods. Dust Bloods, I think, isn't coming until 2026, but it is a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, which is crazy. From Software making an exclusive Nintendo Switch game, Nintendo Switch 2 game, I should say. And I think that's like, I was just talking about how, Bethesda on Switch 1 with Skyrim, and now you have From Software on Switch 2, you know, with Elden Ring. But this is even bigger a deal because they're getting their own exclusive game. All of those crazy Souls-like fans out there are gonna have to buy a Switch 2 now if they want to play this new From Software Souls-like. Like it's crazy. I don't know how Nintendo got them to make this game, or maybe they did it. I don't know. But somebody got them to do this. Um, and I'm excited. I'm not gonna play it. Like I'm not a Souls-like guy, but I'm excited in the sense that you know there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on Switch too. A lot of people are gonna be on Switch that aren't typically on Switch. A lot of people are gonna be putting their attention on Nintendo that aren't normally putting their attention on Nintendo, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a very healthy time for Nintendo, I'm sure. I guess I'm not sure, but I'm assuming, right? The next game you saw a star. And when I first started the star, I was like, "Oh, it's Kirby," right? I was like, "It's a Kirby game, right? It's a Kirby game." And slowly, Kirby appears, and he's like, gliding through a black void on his little star. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Smash Brothers! It's Smash Brothers! It's Smash Brothers!" Right? And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Smash Brothers!" Then he comes down to the ground and he starts riding on the ground on his star. And I was like, "Wait a minute, is this Kirby's air ride? Like, seriously, is this Kirby's air ride?" Sure enough, it's Kirby Air Riders. Not Kirby Air Ride, but Kirby Air Riders. It's a new Kirby Air Ride game, which is quite odd, to say the least. It's even more strange because Kirby Air Ride, the original, isn't coming to the GameCube Switch Online. I'm sure it probably will at some point, but it's not currently. Um, and yeah, I guess this is the game that Masahiro Sakurai has been working on this entire time, since he left his YouTube channel. And I don't know. I mean, Kirby Air Riders. Do we need another racing game? I guess. I'll take it. Right. Another online game on Switch too. I'm assuming this is gonna be a big online game. But yeah, we didn't really hear anything about it. I'm assuming this is gonna be a late in the year thing. Because it is supposed to be coming out in 2025. So we'll probably hear about it in like the June Direct or September Direct. I don't know if we're having a June Direct. Maybe we're not having a June Direct. I don't know. I'm sure we'll hear something about something, you know, between now and September. Um, I would have to assume, right? So Kirby Air Ride, pretty big thing, and then we have the final, one more thing of the presentation, which I went in totally expecting it to be 3D Mario, but instead it was Donkey Kong. They're calling it Donkey Kong Bonanza. Comes out on July 17th, so a little more than a month after the console launches. Um, of course, I'm very happy to see a Donkey Kong game. This is a 3D platformer for those who aren't aware. This is a Donkey Kong 3D platformer. The last time that happened was on the 64 in like 1998 or 99, something like that. We had Donkey Kong 64 way back then, and a lot of people didn't like it back then, and a lot of people don't like it now. Um, Donkey Kong Bonanza, it's kind of strange. And honestly, so here's the thing with Donkey Kong Bonanza, and I'll go back to my whole being disappointed about no 3D Mario thing because, you know, to me, every Nintendo console has to have a 3D Mario, and it has to come out in the first year. Because the way I see it, 3D Mario is going to be the game that, from now until the end of the console, I say now, but from June until the end of the console, is going to continue to sell units. People people probably have bought this Switch in 2025 to play Mario Odyssey, even though Mario Odyssey and the Switch are both 8 years old. Like it does not matter how old the games are. People are always going to buy the system to play Mario. And so you would want to get that Mario game out as early as possible, and obviously you would want to get it out at least one on every system. And so for them to not have a 3D Mario game ready seems insane. But for some reason they did not announce it, which tells me that there is no 3D Mario game coming out this year. Unless they're going to announce it in the June Direct and then put it out in November or October. But that just seems weird. So it kind of looks to me like 3D Mario might not come out until 2026. Maybe we won't get a 3D Mario on Switch 2, which I would be very sad about. And I'll probably talk a lot more next week about specifically just 3D Mario. Um, but yeah, I'm definitely a little concerned. I'm very happy with the Direct and very, content on most things, but I'm not on 3D Mario. I have that unanswered question, that little fear, like, oh my god, where's 3D Mario, right? Like, how can you have a console presentation how could you finish out a console presentation and have not talked about 3D Mario? You know, like surely they either would have had to have mentioned it before the presentation or during the presentation, and they did neither. So that definitely scares me just a little bit. I don't know exactly what's happening with that. Of course, I mean, nobody does, right? Um, but that is definitely strange. Um, However, Donkey Kong looks great. Donkey Kong's 3D platformer. It looks like it's also kind of a destruction simulator. I talked about a Bowser game. I got that idea from like Nintendo Land, I think. Um, but it was a 3D Bowser platformer where he goes around kind of just destroying stuff. And it looks like that's kind of what we have going on here with Donkey Kong. And yes, I can't say I'm not excited for a Donkey Kong 3D platformer. I'm a little curious though, like who's developing this? Like that's what I've been thinking about. Who's developing this Donkey Kong platformer? Because obviously, Retro Studios, they're a little busy. They got Metroid Prime 4 on the plate. I'm assuming they don't have time to get this done. Unless they've been done with Metroid Prime 4 and just holding it for Switch 2, which I guess is possible, right? Um, but yes, I can't imagine that this is a Retro Studios game. But at the same time, who else would it be? It would either have to be Retro Studios or EPD Tokyo. And EPD Tokyo are the people behind 3D Mario. And so I'm now very concerned that the 3D Mario team has wasted all this time working on the Donkey Kong game. And like I'm sure the Donkey Kong game is going to be great, but I would definitely trade a 3D Donkey Kong? Sorry. I would definitely trade a 3D Donkey Kong game for a 3D Mario game any day. And so I'm definitely excited about the 3D Donkey Kong game, but I really wish we would have got a 3D Mario game instead. And I kind of am worried that maybe it was the same team that was working on that. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll probably learn that at some point, and then I can complain about it then. But maybe I shouldn't complain about it for now. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they could split into two teams and they got two games going, and this is the first one. I don't know, but I don't really know what's happening. Maybe this is a totally different studio. Maybe this is like Goodfeel. I hope it's not Goodfeel. I don't think Goodfeel would make a good 3D platformer, but anyways, it's somebody. That's for sure. That's all we know, right? It's somebody. Somebody's making this Donkey Kong game, and that's coming out not long after Switch 2, just on July 17th. So this is going to be the second big game on Switch 2. And if you go on the Nintendo website, they're obviously hyping up Mario Kart. But the second big thing there is Donkey Kong Bonanza. So I think Bonanza's a good title as well. Banana, right? Bonanza. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's a good name, right? Um, yeah, I'm definitely very excited for a Donkey Kong. I definitely would have been more excited about 3D Mario, but Donkey Kong still, I don't know if it's a close second. I think the second most exciting thing would have been a new Zelda game. But of course, we weren't expecting that. And then I guess the third most exciting thing would have been like a remake of some Zelda or Mario game. But anyways, I'm not going to go down my whole list, right? But Donkey Kong is definitely up there. And I also hope for a Donkey Kong Country still. I'm hoping that just because we have this Donkey Kong game doesn't mean that we won't get a Donkey Kong Country game. I like to think that Retro Studios is probably going to finish Metroid Prime 4 and hop right into a Donkey Kong Country game, but I don't know, maybe they won't. I really hope they will, because I want a Donkey Kong Country game, but maybe we won't get one. I don't know. I should go knock on the door of Retro Studios, be like, hey, what are you guys doing in there? Let's get going, right? Like, I got a Donkey Kong Country game. But who knows? I don't know. All right, so this is me now a couple days later, and I'm sorry to say, I'm going to end the episode here. I know this isn't as long as most episodes, and it's kind of abrupt and ending, but I have delayed putting this episode out for a couple days now because I've been sick and my voice is messed up, and so I didn't want to put out the episode um, with weird voice and stuff and it not making sense. So I'm just going to end it here, and I will talk more about the state of Switch 2, I'm sure, in the next episode. Thanks everyone for watching. You can email the show with any questions, any comments at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. You can also follow the show on Blue Sky and on X. You can follow my personal Blue Sky. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can join the community Discord in the comment section. Thanks all for watching. I'll see you all next Wednesday. We're going to be back to Wednesday next week, so I'll see you then.